We're here today to talk about a piece of research that we've conducted with our proprietary media analysis tool, Rumour. The research looks at the cybersecurity media landscape to identify those publications that rank most highly in the UK, but also on a global scale. So with me today, I've got Jane Wakefield, a senior tech and broadcast journalist for the BBC and the host of the UK Tech News monthly podcast. Also, I have James Coker, deputy editor of Infosecurity Magazine, one of the UK's leading cybersecurity trade publications. Thank you both so much for being here and welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
We're really excited about getting you both in here today just to better understand the kind of things that make the articles on your sites rank highly, what they cover, what performs well, and the types of things that they're looking for from cybersecurity experts, and then how best to engage with them going forward. If you're ready, we'll jump into the questions. Can you tell me a little bit about the publications that you write for? And how do the editorial teams actually decide which stories to cover? So Jane, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I'm still writing for the BBC, and the topic that they want me to write about, and actually I'm very happy to write about because I'm very interested in it, is AI. And that's kind of takes up all my time in terms of writing for BBC. I'm not in the daily news cycle. But from a feature point of view, AI is fascinating. I've got a piece coming out later this week actually about scams, which I find really quite terrifying, the number of scams that are out there. And this particular article is about me. That sounds so egocentric, doesn't it? But I was getting loads and loads of messages a few months ago from people saying, did you write this article? Did you write this article? And it was an article of me seemingly interviewing celebrities and endorsing cryptocurrency. And it was in a BBC template, it had my byline on. And these people who were quite savvy business people were not sure if it was by me or not. And that was quite worrying because it was very clearly a fake article generated by AI. So I decided to write about that, and that's the latest piece that I've done. And I turned to cybersecurity people there to help me try and understand where these articles were coming from. So I was really calling upon cyber experts to help me with that. So yeah, AI has been the big topic for me.
So Infosecurity Magazine, we're a B2B publication. Our audiences are made up of cybersecurity professionals. So our aim is to educate and engage and sort of inform them on their practices in their day-to-day working lives. In terms of the stories that we cover, we have a range of freelance and in-house editorial staff. So we give them quite a lot of flexibility around the stories that we'll be covering. Obviously, that's something we'll look at every morning and see what breaking stories are coming out. We also have a US-focused freelancer who will come on in the afternoon and focus on stories specifically to that region. We also have to be quite selective about the types of data breaches and cyber incidents that we cover, because there's just so many that take place every week, unfortunately. So we'll certainly focus on those that involve particularly high-profile organisations or critical infrastructure in organisations such as utilities and energy firms.
What factors commonly impact the performance of stories on your respective sites?
We found that SEO is very important. So headline is obviously vital for getting people to click on the story initially. We place quite a big emphasis on imagery now, so sort of on the headline banner and also within the text. We also look to break up the story into different headings, which makes it easier for the audience to digest and find the parts of the article that they find most relevant. I think timing of the story is really important as well. So obviously if we can get a story out before our competitors, that can have a big impact on the viewership. And in terms of timing as well, if an issue is particularly topical at that moment, that will be very important. And finally, social media. So if we have someone who shares a story on social media, who's very prominent in the cybersecurity community and has a big following, that can also have a big impact.
Well, unfortunately, bad news sells. So something that's gone horribly wrong, a big data breach that affected loads of people, is going to do much better than something that's a little bit more nuanced. Cybersecurity stuff that affected consumers, things where people would look at it and go, oh, have I been affected by that? Should I be worried about this? So things that are going to draw people in because it's got a consumer angle will probably do better in that sphere.
What topics are attracting the most interest on your sites at the moment, and how do they dictate the types of stories that you're currently writing?
AI has been a huge topic recently, I think particularly since ChatGPT and other generative AI tools have become available. Yeah, so in the past year, a lot of it's been around its potential to help attackers and defenders, but we're trying to find new angles on this area now. So, for example, actually implementing these tools into how they can help security teams practically, and also addressing some of the risks that using generative AI tools can provide, such as vulnerabilities on platforms like ChatGPT and the risk of data leakage. Ransomware has been like a continuously big topic, really, because it can have such big real-world impacts. And a big example of that is the ransomware attack on the US health payment provider called Change Healthcare earlier this year. That led to prescription disruptions and disruptions to other healthcare services to patients. And then also the human factor in cybersecurity is quite a big topic as well for our audience. So things like the cyber skills gap and recruitment issues, and also the issue of stress and burnout, which has become very prevalent in cybersecurity. So yeah, we keep an eye on sort of new trends, particularly in tech, but there's also a lot of common themes that continue to be big.
So the trend at the moment is AI. There's a lot of AI going on in cybersecurity, both in terms of the bad guys using AI to improve their techniques for stealing things, and of course cybersecurity industry itself turning to AI to help improve how they fight that. So AI is the thing that I most concentrate on, and I'm writing features at the moment, so I'm looking for more general subjects. I wouldn't be so interested in the news, but I think in terms of the news, ransomware continues to be a big threat, so there's still lots written about that, as things that are affecting daily life, like for instance, election interference, deep fakes, that kind of thing.
What advice would you give to cyber companies who are keen to engage with you and your respective publications?
Well, there was never any shortage of content. People would be sending you quotes as soon as a cyber attack had come out. These quotes were welcome in some ways because, you know, if you were writing about it and you had ready-made quotes being emailed to you, that was great. But I did find that often they would sort of say the same thing and they would be quite speculative in nature because they were sent out so early, nobody really knew who was behind it or what the extent of it was. So it's great to have that kind of information, and if you can make that information stand out, either by giving a really pithy, colourful quote or by knowing a little bit more about the story than we already have written about, then that sort of stuff is super useful to me.
I'd say don't necessarily rush to get comments out and just feel like you've got to be the first one to do it. I think it's more important what you are saying. And also we find sometimes that some commentary is almost speculating about how the incident could have been prevented, and sometimes it happens to be a tool that cybersecurity company offers. So yeah, I'd say avoid those types of comments. We also do welcome a lot of opinion articles, so we always welcome pitches of those. But again, these shouldn't be necessarily like product related or talking about particular services. These can talk about kind of contentious issues in cybersecurity. For example, recently we had someone, an opinion piece, who was arguing that there shouldn't be a ban on ransomware payments being made, which has been a big issue in cybersecurity recently.
I would just add as well that a lot of cybersecurity companies do these sort of threat reports, which are really quite interesting, but sometimes they're a little bit overwhelmingly detailed. And actually, what would possibly be better is to just give journalists a hint of, you know, so if they've seen something new that's happening in their world, then just tell us that in a very basic email. We don't necessarily need it wrapped up in a massively professional report.
Sure. What role do you think that data has in cybersecurity journalism? And in your eyes, you know, what makes good data?
Yeah, I mean, data obviously playing a huge role in journalism now. I think the BBC's got a whole department devoted to data journalism. From my point of view, I would always prefer just to get it in plain kind of terms rather than have to wade through a huge report or a load of data. But actually case studies, I don't think we've mentioned that, case studies are great. You know, if there's been some cyber attack and they perhaps can't say the actual name, but even if they can give kind of, you know, this area, it was banks that were hit and here's a case study from one, that's really valuable to me because it really paints the picture then of what happened. Because again, I think for a lot of people, cybersecurity is almost like it's behind a wall. It's like something that's done in a hidden way and nobody really understands it. But if you can make it real and make it come to life by giving case studies, then that's really important, I think.
I think it's huge in cybersecurity. I think for our audience of cybersecurity professionals, it's such a fast evolving threat landscape, and attackers are constantly changing their techniques. So it's vital that they're getting actionable and fast insights on these changes so they can prioritise their cybersecurity posture. For example, we had a report out from Mandiant this week that showed that attackers are moving away from phishing as an initial exploitation method, more towards vulnerability exploitations. I think that kind of insight is really, really valuable.
So our research indicates that your publications reach audiences in non-UK geographies around the world. So do you have any idea what kind of percentage of your readers come from non-UK geographies, and how important are they to your publication?
The BBC has two sites. So it's got the .co.uk site, which obviously largely read by people here, but then it's got .com, which is the rest of the world. So we've got that kind of natural split anyway. Whenever we've written about technology, we've always looked to international audiences. And also, because the BBC has a history of things like the World Service, we've looked beyond just North America. We've looked to Africa and India as well, where there's all kinds of interesting things happening in the cybersecurity world. So those audiences are really important to us. And, you know, there's plenty of readers. I think the combined audience of .co.uk and .com a few years ago was something like 1.2 billion monthly. So there's a lot of people reading our site.
We're definitely a global publication, so we're certainly not UK specific. I don't have exact figures to hand, but the majority of our audience is actually US based, but we also have a large audience in the UK and Europe and quite a few other places around the world, such as India as well.
Fantastic. This has all been really insightful, really useful, but do you have any final tips, final thoughts for our viewers or listeners?
So my 3 tips would be, I'm writing for consumers and about consumers, so make your information that you give to me about consumers, see that angle throughout what you're sending, and make things explainable and understandable to people. Secondly, case studies or anything that helps illustrate how this is affecting people in the real world is really valuable to me, because for a lot of people, they see cybersecurity as complex, behind a wall, and anything that can bring it out from that is really good. And thirdly, I would say, you know, make friends with me. Tell me stuff off the record. I want to know what's going on. You know what's going on, what the latest trends are. Don't be afraid to contact me and talk to me like that, because, you know, the more that I've built a relationship with somebody, the more likely I am to use them in an official capacity when I'm writing a story.
My first one would be to kind of reiterate the point, don't rush to get comments out. We often do follow-up stories to big breaches and cyber incidents, so even considered comments when there's more facts become available in the days and weeks after an incident can still be relevant. My second one would be, in terms of research reports and case studies, make sure that they're saying something new and it's relevant to cybersecurity professionals in their roles, and not kind of necessarily just endorsing a product, so to speak. And also make sure that the data used there's a wide range of data used, for example, a large number of participants in a survey. And finally, to echo Jane's point, I think just having that personal face-to-face relationships with journalists, I think, is really important. It helps us really remember people, and we're more likely to click on an email and read an email where we see the name of someone that we've built a relationship with.
Thank you both so much for coming in to talk to us. Really great conversation. I certainly learned a lot. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about how Rumour can help your company, then please do get in touch. We'd love to have a conversation.